Okay. Yeah, that's right. It's another Palworld video. I wanted to do this first, but the last video that we made was one of the reaction requests from the Discord server. Um, Hopefully the next time you guys see me, I'll be in a better location, and I will have Palworld merch. Cross your fingers for that. But if you see if you don't see a lot of videos from me, it's because I'm dealing with something outside of this channel. Y'all will find out soon enough. But we're here now, okay? I wanted to do this video specifically because I wanted to explore the hidden story behind Palworld and a bit in a snippet of what I was talking about in the last video regarding Palworld and the hidden messages that it's leaving behind. Even though the devs claim that there is no story with Palworld, there is story with Palworld. So NeddyTheNoodle made this video 6 days ago. The full story of Palworld explained. Um, for a lot of people, even though this currently, and I'm gonna say it now, and officially, this game overall has achieved 19 million copies on Steam and Xbox as of this recording. Yeah, early access within a week, it has received 19 million, almost damn near 20. Shoot, it's gonna be 20 by most likely by the time I finish this video and a couple of days from now. So even if the other article that I made a video about wasn't necessarily accurate, it will be accurate. But let me just stop being messy and just go ahead and react to this. Like the video, share it, and subscribe if you haven't, if you're interested in this channel and where we're going with this. If not, and you feel as though I should be reacting to other things, go watch someone else. Do not subscribe to me, and if you are, unsubscribe, please, and unfollow me, please and thank you.
Diving into Palworld, I wasn't expecting much of a story. In most survival games, especially by indie devs, while crafting items is often a huge component, there's usually very little care put into crafting a narrative. Games like Ark are a rare example of a survival game that at least has a thoughtful story and tons of lore, but I didn't know what to expect with Palworld. I mean, surely this game about adorable little Pokemon creatures that you can equip with guns wouldn't have that much to say, right? Well, what if I told you that Palworld's lore provides a commentary on many different aspects of our own world, such as the hypocrisy of the way some of us treat animals, the corruption of government and police forces, the destruction of the drug epidemic, and the sheer brutality of humanity in destroying not only themselves, but the creatures that inhabit the world with us. That
Right.
and more is what I'm going to go over in this video as we cover what it is that makes the island of Palworld so unique, what all of its characters represent, and how the gameplay is not the only thing making a statement to the gaming industry and the world overall. The writing is not perfect by any means, especially because some of it seems to have been lost in translation between Japanese to English. But there is a lot of it, and what Palworld does best is the world building of the mysterious Palpagos Island. And speaking of the world, how exactly is the lore disseminated to the player, you may be wondering? Well, Palworld uses epistolary like many games in the survival genre, which means that the narrative is delivered through letters, notes, journal entries, or in this case, memos left across the game world. They're left by one of 6 characters, and there are 39 in total right now. So without further ado, let's jump right in, starting with the character more relatable to your own, the Castaway. They have no gender defined in their memo, so they may be either male or female. The Castaway was an explorer that wanted to discover the hidden places of the world. They came from outside of Palpagos Island and originally knew nothing of it, but they noticed an empty spot on their map of the world and decided to sail out towards that spot, since it was
Okay.
kind of unusual for it to be so empty, so uncharted. When they eventually made it near the island, they found a thick fog that shrouded the whole thing, and it was making it hard to navigate. Eventually, after trying to steer away, they couldn't escape the fog, and they were attacked. By a person, by a creature, who knows? But when they came to, their ship was wrecked, and now the castaway was stranded. They made it.
So, for some people who encountered this phenomenon of an island, they either come across it unknowingly and alive, or they get sent there. Because, like I said before, that one dude, and I hope he addresses it. This consecrated addresses it in this video. Um, the dude who was a cop got hit by a truck, and when he came to, he ended up on that island and was able to produce pizza out of his hand at will, freshly hot pizza. Now I don't know if that was lost in translation, if he meant to say something else, but it's very peculiar because it sounds to me like uh 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 Palworld is sort of like a Bermuda Triangle, where it's a paradox world that is just its own its own thing outside of the real world. It's just its own thing. Its world exists as its own. It's not connected to anything, but it's enshrouded in mystery. That from just 2 minutes, that is what I'm getting from this. It's just a sort of like a Bermuda Triangle like world.
To the island, one which existed in no database to their knowledge. It appeared hidden from the rest of the world. The castaway wondered why it had never been discovered before, why it wasn't on any maps. They
Right.
theorized that their vessel was attacked to keep the island concealed, undiscovered. Once the castaway made it to the shore, they found the Sheikah tablet from Zelda Breath of the Wild. Oh, hey, what are you doing there, buddy? This thing, obviously not the Zelda Sheikah tablet, but something very similar, was capable of recording images and displaying information. It is, of course, the same tablet that you pick up when you first start the game. So with their newfound iPad, the castaway began taking pictures and documenting their findings. They quickly realized that the island had all kinds of living creatures, unlike anything found in the rest of the world. A bright blue sphere caught the castaway's eyes, and when they picked up and tossed the thing, curious about it, the sphere landed near one of the creatures and absorbed it. The castaway threw the sphere again, and the creature that was absorbed reappeared, suddenly becoming their companion. They decided to name this creature a pal, and dubbed the island they had discovered Palpagos Island. Through exploring, the castaway discovered many things, including ruins with murals on the walls and symbols with instructions on how to craft more of the spheres they had used to tame a pal earlier. It needed wood, stone, and a resource they eventually named Paldium, a blue energy-infused ore. This allowed the castaway to craft more spheres, and they tamed more pals with them. The castaway eventually amassed a crew of these things, including ones that resembled a sheep, a bird, and a cat. They helped divvy up the work for the castaway, reminding them of how the ancient civilization here must have worked with pals to prosper. The pals did not appear to be that intelligent on their own, but they did work hard and they worked pretty well together. If the pals had helped build the ruins, the castaway theorized that perhaps this had something to do with why they were destroyed. Since they'd arrived, the castaway noticed a giant tree in the distance, theorizing that it could be some kind of world tree. There's something odd that's bothered me since I arrived here. Far off in the distance, I can see what looks like an enormous tree, big enough to be the so-called world tree spoken about in so many myths. Still, it's so large that no amount of fog would be enough to obscure it from view from outside the island. The only hypothesis I can come up with is that something other than the fog enveloping this island prevents it from being seen by the outside world. In other words, some kind of mechanism must be preventing it from being seen from the outside. It seems likely that the mysterious powers these pals have has something to do with them. One day, they discovered a pal riding on an ekthyr, a deer-like pal, and they tried mimicking this behavior by attaching a saddle to a similar pal and riding on it. This helped the castaway explore the island further. Eventually, through exploration, they discovered a tower in the distance, and while heading towards it, they were ambushed by a man with a gun. Their sheep, of all things, protected them from the assailant, but not long after escaping, they were attacked by the same person again, which the castaway's pals ultimately defended against, killing the attacker. At this point, the person started to feel like this island drove people to do the worst kinds of things, removing people's sense of ethics. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. After finally arriving to the tower, Our castaway heard lots of gunfire from what seemed to be
And you
conflicting
know what? That kind of makes sense because when you encounter the grunts, they don't act like normal human beings. When you encounter they have red eyes. They have glowing red eyes. They don't speak, nor do they like have any kind of. I'm just like observing. This is just me observing, but like they don't. It's just like they have this aggressive like nature to them, and it makes it seem like they're not human anymore, even though they clearly are, but they don't, but they're not. It's just like this brute, like he was saying, this something about the that world, that island, is making them just act that way. It's very peculiar.
groups, but pressed on nonetheless. At the tower, they accidentally pressed on a slab and were transported to an arena where a large pal and their human owner sat dormant, guarding the place. The castaway ran in terror, and before they knew it, they woke outside the tower, confused. Avoiding the towers for now, they did more research into the island. What were the ancients doing? According to runes, the ancients must have lived in luxury alongside pals, but clearly
Wait a minute.
and their human
Go back
owner
to that again.
conflicting groups, but pressed on nonetheless. At the tower, they accidentally pressed on a slab and were transported to an arena where a large pal and their human owner sat dormant, guarding the place. The castaway ran in terror, and before they knew it, they woke outside the tower, confused. Avoiding the towers for now, they did more research into the island. What were the ancients doing? According to runes, the ancients must have lived in luxury alongside pals, but clearly this way of life was lost. Perhaps the towers and their power had something to do with it. Could their ability to teleport have been what potentially destroyed previous human civilization on Palpago's island? Until now, the castaway had been eating a more herbivorous diet, but when they saw a pal consuming the flesh of another pal, this gave them the idea to try it out for themselves, slaughtering a bird type and frying them up, making some Kentucky Fried Pals, KFP. This helped aid in their strength, and when they found a giant pal in a large open field, most likely one of the many open world pal bosses we fight ourselves in game, the castaway ran in a panic. They recalled their size and tried to understand how some pals could possibly get so large. What was their source of energy? It couldn't just come from food or photosynthesis alone, right? It had to be something else. Again, perhaps it had something to do with the tower. Maybe the tower relied on the same energy source the pals did, but through some human intervention. At least the castaway theorized. In further domesticating and taming more pals, they took note of the fact that pals don't breed like normal animals. It basically just requires a male and female pair, and eventually an egg just kind of appears. Also, the bodies of dead pals seem to just vanish out of thin air, strangely. This would imply they're magical in some way, or that the energy that guides them is more complex than anything known by man outside the island. Where do pals come from? And where do they go when they die? Is there a pal heaven? More inscriptions taught the castaway about how to create pal boxes, compressing the pal spheres even further and teleporting them across distances just like how we can ourselves when playing. Becoming accustomed to the island.
I like the fact that the Lord, even when they're talking about the Baal just disappearing out of nowhere, just like disappearing after they're been killed. I'm glad that they're not saying they're using that and not letting that just be a game mechanic, because for just the game to like respawn the same kind of pals so that that way you could just keep killing them. There's a reason behind it, and it's all pointing to most likely that giant tree.
The castaway began giving their pals guns, and building a seasoned, large team of them, they traveled far and wide, discovering more evidence of the ancient civilization. Having now journeyed far from where I first drifted ashore, I've come across a massive statue in the shape of a pal. I am nearly certain it is a legacy of the ancient civilization, but why would humans build a statue such as this? Everything I've found thus far has suggested that pals lived
Whoa.
alongside these ancients as equals, but constructing a monument like this must mean some were also objects of worship. Perhaps there are
Yeah, they worshipped him. They worship the pals. They worship these creatures. This makes me want to play the game now. I really want. I just want to stop this video and play the game. Oh my god, I want to get back into playing the game now. Shit, and I gotta work in the morning. Fuck.
There are certain pals out there that have a special significance both to people and to pals. And that is where the Castaway journals end. But that last journal especially proves very telling. The Castaway
Damn.
was not wrong. The significance of certain pals to certain people is a critical factor for the other characters, who appear as bosses in the game, guarding the various towers alongside their large, threatening, and unusually obedient and loyal pals. Zoe Rain was one such person who would go on to acquire one of these very loyal pals. Growing up without a family, her dad went to go get milk a long time ago, and she never even saw her mother. She was raised by syndicate thugs and a pal named Griswold. The only reason the thugs let her stick around was because her dad used to be one of the bosses in the gang, foreshadowing
Wow.
her eventual role. Eventually, the thugs decided that they wanted to sell Griswold, since to them, pals were merely tools that ought to be sold for cash if that cash outweighed the pal's usefulness. This upset Zoe. She loved Griswold, so she waited until night and let Griswold out of the cage, running away with her. They both got very hungry by evening the next day, and ultimately returned to the base, where they were scolded and both locked up.
Catch me a
But
Griswold.
Griswold became furious, and some latent power was activated within her, and she fought off the thugs, using a lightning bolt that knocked them all out for hours. Zoe remained by Griswold's side ever since. While Zoe seemed to stay with the thugs, forcing them to bend to her newfound position as boss, she took note of a group that the thugs had fought for as long as she had ever known, a group called the Free Pal Alliance, or FPA. She never understood why they were fighting,
Basically, Peter, a religious cult that wants to free pals. Peter.
especially since the FPA seemed like good people, considering they allegedly loved pals so much.
Sometimes I wonder if there's anything beyond the sea. The only thing I can see far off in the distance is that huge tree. I've never heard anyone talk about what's beyond that place. Apparently, some brave guy from long ago went to see the outside world, but he never came back. I've heard about people coming from beyond the sea, though. I don't know what those kinds of people do, but they say they use tools different from our own. That's why I know there must be something beyond the sea. A whole bunch of islands, a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of things. It sounds scary, but I'd like to try going sometime.
Zoe ultimately ended her diary entries when she decided to follow in her father's footsteps. As the boss of these syndicate thugs, she stayed put, guarding one of the towers just like her father had long ago. She took to it, never quite knowing why he did it in the first place, merely mimicking his behavior.
Wow.
From what I've heard about it, they say there's a legend passed down on this island. They said this tower is somehow related to that legend, and then it has some big, great power. What kind of power, I wonder?
What's the legend? What even is oh my god, I'm so invested. I am so invested. Okay, so obviously there's an ancient civilization that worship these creatures. And there is some significance for guarding these towers. Is it to guard the power source for of the tree? This is why I'm moving on for Pokemon, because this is what I wanted for Pokemon and I'm never gonna get it. Oh my god, that is so interesting.
Even if that's true, why does this power have to be protected? Anyway, even though I don't really know why, I'm always here, protecting this tower. There are other towers around the island,
That is
and they see
broken as
people
hell.
like me
He
guard them all.
literally made
Speaking
sure
of
these-
other people who guard the other towers, let's talk about Zoe's indirect rival, Lily
Wow.
Everhart. This woman, being part of the FPA, had
Oh, they're
strict standards
rivals.
for the treatment and inclination towards pals. According to her, the noble beings upheld human civilization since ancient times. Pals have incredible reflexes, intelligence, and other such attributes that make them invaluable. She thought humans were savage compared to pals, and that humans and pals were originally meant to live alongside each other and mutually support each other, instead of the horrible relationship between master and servant that existed then and now as we play the game. The
Okay.
idea of harming a pal, or even worse, eating one, she thought was akin to blasphemy against God. One day, there was a thick fog preventing Lily from seeing well, but suddenly she heard noises coming from pal poachers.
I will recount the day I met Lylene. I remember that the fog was so thick that day.
Owl poachers. I like the fact that she has this pal.
as we play the game. The idea of harming a pal, or even worse, eating one, she thought was akin to blasphemy against God. One day, there was a thick fog preventing Lily from seeing well, but suddenly she heard noises coming from pal poachers.
I will recount the day I met Lylene. I remember that the fog was so thick that day that I could scarcely see in front of my very eyes. I was simply walking along the berry fields, as I am so fond of doing, when I heard the clamorous voices of those abhorrent poachers. When I looked to where I could hear the sound of their filthy screams, I saw them throwing spheres at a pal resembling a vivid lily flower. She was so beautiful and elegant. I pierced their dirty hearts through the back and destroyed their scattered spheres. They shot at me a few times, but it was a trivial matter. I could not touch such a beautiful flower with my trembling, blood-stained hands. Instead, I returned immediately to my base. When I arrived, I found the Queen of the Lilies there, awaiting me. When she touched my arm, my wounds were healed, and the fatigue began to fade away. From that day forward, I decided to become companions with my queen. She's the only flower that blooms in this sad, dark world.
Her next memo goes on to promote the FPA, explaining its 5 commandments.
Won't you join the Free Pal Alliance? The Free Pal Alliance is a long-standing organization that works to protect pals. We have lived together with pals since antiquity, and each of us has a deep love for the wondrous creatures. We have 5 traditional commandments. Thou must not eat pals. Thou must not...
Oh my God, you get to fight the Queen of PETA. Of PETA. This is so okay. So the first leader, what was the leader of the syndicate of the thugs. The second leader is the leader of that organization of PETA. I'm gonna keep calling him PETA because they literally stand for uh uh liberation and freedom and the against abusing pals, like that's PETA, yeah. But let's go ahead to these commandments. Say
We have lived together with pals since antiquity, and each of us has a deep love for the wondrous creatures. We have 5 traditional commandments. Thou must not eat pals. Thou must not overwork pals. Thou must not abuse pals. Thou must not use pals for experiments. Thou must risk thy life to protect pals.
Wow.
Wouldn't you like to join us and protect the pals you love? Your life in service of protecting pals is a small price to pay. The flesh and blood of humans exists only for the glory of pals.
In her final diary entry, Lily went on to describe how there are some places off the shore of the island where certain pals live. None of these types existed on the main island, making them rather rare. She worried that pals would go extinct across the island since their numbers historically were being reduced as new people washed up on the shore. She petitioned the Palpagos Islands Defense Force, or PIDF, to assist with protection, though the FPA had to pay a hefty sum in exchange for said protection.
So when more humans came along, some of the pals grew extinct. Almost damn near grew extinct. Wow.
Strangely, her subordinates in the FPA went to her with lots of new revenue, but she never understood how they could gather so much money, especially by simply raiding poacher camps. This suggests and proves what we see in-game, which is that the FPA subordinates are secretly going against Lily's wishes, doing exactly what the poachers have done as well, capturing, mistreating, and ultimately selling pals in exchange for money, while giving it to Lily without disclosing where it came from. This seems to be a parallel between...
They're hypocrites, exactly like PETA. Wow.
Our own world, namely us, regular people who eat, breed, and otherwise interact with animals in ways that can benefit us. You and I both, unless you're some kind of vegetarian or vegan, eat animals, but every now and then we're confronted with the reality of what that looks like behind closed doors. You know, the brutality of killing animals for food, or the gray area of breeding animals for pet industries, and so on. Just like Lily in Palworld, many of us say we love animals, just like how Lily loves pals, but also like Lily, we're most often blind to the fact that as a result of our actions, we inadvertently harm loads of them. And we even more oftentimes struggle to come up with good arguments that some vegan won't refute with their logic and reasoning. Not that many of us really change our ways, but this is a video about Palworld, so let's get back to the main topic at hand. The other organization mixed up with the FPA, the PIDF, is no stranger to underhanded or illegal behavior themselves.
Oh my fucking God, and he's the leader of the damn cops. This game is so good. This game is so good. Each of them, I was sitting here thinking that these were just some mysterious leaders that just had no merit. That there was no reason for them to be. That they were just there to for you to fight. No, they all have a purpose. They all have a story.
Acting as a kind of police force or government on the island, the PIDF and namely one of its officers, Marcus Dryden, are involved in disturbing practices, to say the least. The incredibly inhumane and egotistical officer criticizes the stupidity of stimulant-addicted people around the desert that he seemingly protects, but to say he protects the people is a bit of a stretch.
What a joke. All the idiots do around here is snort up stims. It's a real dump. There's no point in even trying to control it. PIDF doesn't belong in a place like this. The guys I arrested today couldn't even pay the fine. Guess it's to be expected if they spend all their money getting a fix. Bet they can't even imagine the money they pay ends up lining my pockets. I make a profit when they buy, and then I make more when—
Oh my God, he's a corrupt police chief. He's a corrupted police chief.
I arrest them for possession. And I even get back my product to sell again when I confiscate what they have. It's a grand scheme. They're idiots, and I'm a genius. This is just their punishment for being fooled. Understand? This island is just my little sandbox to play on. For all I care, they can live their sad little lives without ever knowing I'm the one supplying their fix and the one controlling it. If I let them get carried away, they'll just go off demanding rights that ain't fit for garbage like them.
As you could probably tell, this guy's a f***ing asshole. He supplies drugs to people, presumably cocaine, and then busts them for it, and resells the drugs that he busted them for. This seems to be a clear parallel in our real world to governments that support drugs like fentanyl getting into different countries like America and into supplies of both prescription and black market drugs, but taken to the extreme with the portrayal of this character. The brutality of this police force, if you can even call it that.
And can we just mention the fact that there's so much in this game? You have police corruption, you have literally PETA, you have these aggressive thugs, you have animal rights, you have drug abuse, you and to top it all off, the mystery of the power source of this freaking tree and the towers. Holy crap.
Mirrors the often brutal circumstances of police in many countries around the world too, and it immediately
I
got me
love
thinking
his
about how there
bird.
have been stories about cops that'll plant drugs in people's cars and then bust them for it. It's disgusting, and you probably didn't expect anything like that to be presented in this game. I certainly myself was not expecting that as part of the lore of Palworld of all games. Anyway, Marcus noticed that some syndicate thugs were eating into his profits by selling stims in his territory, and so, like he had a habit of doing, he let his partner, Phalaris, a drug-addicted bird-type pal, obliterate the thugs. Marcus ultimately didn't trust Phalaris that much, as the creature was rather unpredictable due to its behavior after snorting the cocaine, but he was ready to ride or die with this thing.
Another peaceful day on the island. More proof we're having fun playing house, right, Phalaris? Don't worry, I get it. You've got the same eyes as me. You're having fun playing house too, yeah? Or maybe you're just waiting for me to fall over dead. You sure do like eating that white stuff, huh? Maybe the day will come when I'm just leftovers stuck to your wings.
Jesus Christ, he gave the bird drugs? Fucked up. I love it.
Maybe not. Either way, let's just watch each other's backs until then. Right, partner?
While Marcus hardly had any concern for the complexity of pals beyond how he could use them purely for his own ego and territory, Victor Ashford is quite the opposite, though in many ways no better. As commander of the PAL Genetic Research Unit, he had a deep interest in understanding how pals
And this motherfucker is in charge of experimenting on the power. I'm sorry, I forgot. There's also creature experimentation and animal experimentation. This game has everything. This game has everything. This game literally has everything, and he looks like freaking Riku from Organization 13. What else could I ask for other than some action figures of each of these leaders? Because I want them. Jesus Christ.
Function, and how he could potentially modify them. At first, Victor's experiments to create four-legged pals with wings proved unsuccessful. He was able to create bodies, but they deteriorated within seconds and were all disposed of. He jotted down to reconsider different chemicals to use, or trying Eikthyr antlers to create a compound to try next. Ultimately, he came to the conclusion that he would need better equipment from outside to build new, self-made blueprints to aid in his work. On the distillation and administration of pals to the same species results. Success. A certain species of pal was dissolved in liquid and concentrated via distillation. Subsequently, the concentrated liquid was administered to pal of the same species. As expected, the result yielded an enhancement in the abilities of the administered pal. Impressions. This experiment, initiated as an alternative approach towards generating powerful pals, surprisingly yielded favorable outcomes. Theories postulating that pals of a certain species contain the nutrients most necessary for the same type of pal seem valid. This experiment has accordingly resulted in the enhancement of the test pal's abilities. However, there remains a slight doubt regarding whether the observed enhancement surpassed the anticipated values. Perhaps it is not merely a matter of basic nutrients, but rather we must question whether pals inherently possess a distinct energy source essential for their own existence. Further investigation is required. And with more time spent on experiments, Victor succeeded again. He finally made an original specimen, an artificially created pal with 4 legs and wings. But upon trying to reproduce the results, he wasn't able to. It seemed like this was a miracle of pal science. Very satisfied with his new species, which he
This man created his own Mewtwo just by splicing the genes of pals until he got something that actually worked. This man wanted a four-legged beast with wings, and he got it. Holy crap. And you know what? It looks menacing as fuck. It looks menacing as hell.
named Shadowbeak, Victor, like the many other leaders, guarded the tower nearest to him with his newfound and extraordinarily strong creature, though his lab assistant Alex had apparently disappeared, which brings us to our final character in the lore, one which may actually be Alex, but having rearranged the letters into Axel instead. This is purely a theory, but could be why it was mentioned that his assistant went missing. Either way, Axel Traverse, the final one of the tower bosses in the game, is rather full of himself. Being the leader of the Brothers of the Eternal Pyre group, Axel has only one memo. I think it's like a crappy series of rap lyrics.
And of course, he has the Thunder version of Garge. One of them had to have it, Rio. One of them had to have it.
Every day I'm snoring, no rifles to get me going. I don't care about they type, ain't nobody gonna beat my height. I'm looking for a fight, a real
What? Why did you make his voice sound like that?
tough brother from another mother. Throwing in the towel ain't gonna cut it. It's gonna be a knockout, a throwdown brawl out. So fast your eyes will bleed. When we ready for the battle, you better believe the shark's gonna rock your socks off. Saw it off, my lightning is tougher than High King's. When it hits the ring, ain't nobody gonna be singing for you, play.
Bro, what the fuck is happening? But with that,
I was getting ready to say, I hope that's not my video speeding it up.
we conclude the memos of Palworld, at least at this point in time. No doubt they'll add to the lore, and I really hope they do. I especially hope that they add proper voiceover to the game and flesh out the characters and narrative. Ultimately, Palworld is a lot deeper than what you'll find at the surface level through the gameplay, and I hope that you now have a good understanding of the lore. It seems like the towers across the world have some kind of energy within them, and this has something to do with the misunderstood energy inside of pals. At the very beginning of the game, you're tasked with seeking out the towers, which are the keys, and ultimately reaching the tree which holds the truth. So it seems like we're gonna have many more answers in the future whenever we can actually reach the tree, because right now, well, even after killing every boss of every tower, you still can't reach the damn tree. If you like this video, subscribe to my channel for more survival game lore. And as always, I'll talk to you next time.
interesting. I have a feeling this game is getting interesting more and more every time I hear about it. Okay, so what did we learn from here? That Palworld is more than just what I initially thought. Palworld is a lot more than what people have been talking about. Palworld is the world I've been wanting for the past 30 years. I love it. I don't know what else to say. I love it. I love it. Like just the entries of each of these leaders alone, and they all have their own reason of being there. It, and of course, the last one is full of himself because he has an electric Garchomp, a giant land shark. Of course, you'd be full of yourself. Fucking Cynthia was full of herself, and she was the champion. Why wouldn't she be? You got the most powerful creature in the game, and that looks like the most powerful creature in the game. Aside from the genetically made modified pal that the other one had. I'm glad I got to see this video. And I'm glad I got to do a reaction to this. This was worth it. Y'all let me know in the comments down below what you thought about this video because I'm blown the fuck away. I'm blown away. There's no ifs and buts about it. I am blown away by this. I truly am because like I said before, I didn't think it would be this deep despite the fact that Pocket Pair said that there was no story. Oh, there's story. It's just that it's hidden. I see what y'all doing. And now that my Xbox has decided to work with you guys to improve this game, yeah, things about to get crazy. But I'm gonna leave it off right here. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Like I said before, let me know what you thought about this video. This has been Master of Sakurai. I love y'all, and I will see y'all again next time. I'm out. Peace.